The family of a British couple detained in Iran say they've been sentenced to 10 years in prison. Craig and Lindsey Foreman have denied charges of espionage following their arrest during an around-the-world motorcycle trip last year. The UK government have called the jail terms totally unjustifiable. David Harper reports.
The trip of a lifetime on a journey from the UK to Australia by motorbike has now become a 10-year prison sentence.
Shock is what I would have felt, but now I'm not shocked by anything that happens here. The physical reaction was, I suppose what I would be used to is, the pit of my stomach and my mouth went dry and just disbelief, really.
Lindsay and Craig Foreman had travelled from Spain across Europe and then on New Year's Eve 2024 into Iran.
Super grateful for being here, just in this lovely country with these lovely people.
They posted pictures online from Tabriz, Tehran and Isfahan, but on January the 3rd, the updates stopped. They had been arrested on charges of espionage and are being held in the notorious Evin prison, often in solitary confinement. Lindsay and Craig say that they entered Iran legally, with all procedures followed, and they have no ties to any government. Back in the UK, their family has been campaigning for their release. Richard Ratcliffe, the husband of Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, who was detained in Iran for 6 years, has supported them, and they've called on the government to assist. The Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has said this sentence is completely appalling and totally unjustifiable. We will pursue this case relentlessly with the Iranian government until we see Craig and Lindsey Foreman safely returned to the UK and reunited with their family. But speaking to BBC News from Evin prison, Lindsay can see little hope at present.
We have done what we can to be respectful of their system, to be patient with the legal process, believing that our innocence will prevail. But it doesn't seem to be the case.
David Harper, BBC News.
Let's speak to our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale. James, talk us through the Foreign Office response on this.
Well, the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has put out a statement saying, and I quote, that the sentence that the couple have been given is completely appalling and totally unjustifiable. She goes on to say, we will pursue this case relentlessly with the Iranian government until we see Craig and Lindsay safely return to their family. And in the meantime, their welfare is our priority, and we will continue to provide consular assistance to them and their families. So that's what she says. The one sort of more positive news is the fact that the British Embassy in Tehran has reopened. It was closed temporarily last month because of the deadly protests that were challenging the regime last month. The difficulty, of course, is the geopolitical context, because right now an American armada is off the coast of Iran. There are huge geopolitical tensions. The regime is weaker than it has been for some time. And the risk is that in that context, it holds on to whatever political tools it can. And quite often, detained foreign nationals are often seen as pawns in a wider game.
James Landale, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's get more now on the British couple jailed by Iran for 10 years. Craig and Lindsey Foreman were arrested, as we mentioned, while passing through Iran and sentenced to prison for espionage. With me is Joe Bennett, their son. So thank you very much indeed for coming to talk to us. And we heard there from James that there is a kind of geopolitical context to this. Tell us what you're hearing from your sources.
Yeah, I mean, we try not to get dragged into that geopolitical because we have no control over it. I think it's a scary thought that whilst any war is a scary thought, my parents could be in the middle of it. And we also lead into the fact that, the peace talks were ongoing and that there should be and hopefully can be a peaceful resolution, but quite aware that that might not be the case. And
tell us about the conditions they're being held in and what you're hearing is the latest from there.
I mean, their conditions are subpar, to put it very, very respectfully. I mean, they are living in a hellhole. I mean, there's no... So their bunk beds are triple stacked high. There's literally 2 blankets as a mattress. It's overcrowded. It's vermin infested in the kitchens. They've woken up with rats in their bed. I mean, it is horrendous. I can't put it into words because I've not been there, and I don't think I do it any justice, to be honest with you. But from what I've heard and the state that it's put both my mum and Craig in, just tells you the toll that it's taking on them both.
And so how are you getting, so that they're in the Evin prison, which is, you know, notorious for bad conditions and so on. How do you get your information about them at this stage?
So we have calls. They went on a hunger strike back in November to facilitate these calls. They were promised that by their judge, that they could have calls with the family and also see one another, and they just weren't being upheld. And that is their only weapon that they have. It's their only way to actually take back some control, is to not eat and to say, I'm choosing this over my own body. So we get information from them. It's been harrowing over the last month and whatnot with the protests, and you're getting a real sense for how that's affecting people inside the prison whose families have now unfortunately been killed, right? This is the stark reality of where they are.
And in terms of the sentence, you heard that they'd been sentenced for 10 years. How did that?
So
how was your reaction when you heard that?
I was sick to my stomach. You know, I just felt empty, lost. And for a brief moment, I just thought, well, it's over. You know, all this fight that we've been giving for the last 7 months whilst being public is almost in vain. But then it's, you know, you start to look again at previous cases, and sentencing can actually bring back a resolution. You know, this is now, like we've seen with Yvette's statement, they're taking it seriously, and I think the stance has changed.
And just to go back to the circumstances that when they were taken prisoner, had they kind of realised the risks of going into Iran? Tell us what your understanding of, you know, when they went in there, what were they kind of thinking?
Yeah, I don't think that they could ever predict that something as severe as this would happen to them. I think they're saying, you know, now they've spoken, that it didn't quite outline that arbitrary detention or hostage taking was a part of what could happen. I don't think anybody foresees them being detained for 14 months. And they'd also spoken to a lot of people who've done this journey. You know, they're not pioneers. They are a set of millions of people who've travelled across Iran, and they get accounts from those people who say, oh no, it's a lovely country, the people are hospitable, and all of this kind of thing. And that's what they were saying as well, is that, you know, it was a lovely place, but they found themselves at the wrong end of the regime, right? Yeah. And that's where it's put them in this position.